Hi everyone, welcome back to the Puttering Penman. Today I'm going to talk about things I've learned during my 10 years in the fountain pen hobby. Here in the United States, we don't really get to use fountain pens as kids the way that, people in Europe and Asia do. So I got into fountain pens by buying my first pen, this Pilot Varsity, in November of 2013. So for those who aren't familiar, the Pilot Varsity is a disposable pen. This cost me $6 10 years ago. When I got it, I actually didn't like it that much. It was unlike a ballpoint pen where the ink dries very quickly and it doesn't spread on cheap paper. I was using, of course, cheap copy paper because I didn't know any better, and the ink would spread a lot. So I didn't actually use this very much, but then couple years later, I ended up getting a Pilot Metropolitan. It was this one. I got it in 2015, so about a year and a half after the Varsity. Again, same issue. I didn't really like it for the exact same reasons, the ink spread, all of that. I was always into getting new ballpoint pens and trying it, so I figured try another fountain pen. But then I started using fountain pens a lot when I got into the calligraphy hobby. So I was learning copperplate, and when you're using a dip pen, you have to hold the pen at a certain angle. That angle, when you hold a ballpoint pen, you hold it very vertically. Of course, you hold a fountain pen more at 45-degree angle to the table and paper. So in order to get better with my calligraphy, I started using this fountain pen again. And once I had gotten used to it, I'd researched a bit more. I bought some better paper, some Rhodia. I got actual fountain pen ink other than just the cartridges, and that sort of changed how I like the fountain pen hobby. So the first learning I have is pen and ink and paper is an important combination. So in the fountain pen hobby, we often talk about just the pen itself. And of course, there are ink reviews and paper reviews, but it's the combination of the three that really make a big difference. So you'll want, decent quality paper, like a Rhodia Clairefontaine, Tomoe River. There are a lot of other ones like Kokuyo makes a good, inexpensive fountain pen friendly paper. CD Apica notebooks are really good. Black and red notebooks are also pretty good. So there are a lot of good choices in notebooks, and it's really the combination that make a difference. You can have, the ink also makes a difference, not just for the color, but how wet or dry it is. You want to pair it appropriately with the fineness or broadness of your nib and the wetness and dryness of the feed in the pen. And you really don't know until you try a lot of combinations out to see what you do and do not enjoy. The second thing I want to note is that, in my opinion, more expensive pens are not necessarily better than less expensive pens. The most expensive pen in my collection is this Pelikan M800, brown black. It was a limited edition from, I think, 2019 or 2020. And it was like $500 or something, a little bit more than that. So this is a great pen. I absolutely love it, but I use this pen just as much or maybe even less than some of the other pens in my collection, such as the Platinum Prefont, which is I think it's an $11 pen. I also use my Pilot Kakuno a ton. Other pens I use a lot is this Pelikan M120, which is another limited edition that's retailed for $180. I bought it for $120. This is about my Kaweco Piston Sport for about $200. Pilot Pereira for about $60, maybe $50. But you get the picture. I use pens from all price points, and it's not necessarily that the more expensive pens are the better pens or I enjoy using them more. Typically, more expensive pens have nicer materials. You should be getting better quality control, although that's not always true. They often come with gold nibs instead of steel nibs, and because gold is more expensive, it's built into the price. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it writes better. I think like all of these pens that are on the screen right now write great. It's a personal preference. Some people like drier nibs, some people like more feedback, some people like smoother, and price is not an indicator of any of those qualities. So I think a lot of times, this gets us into our next point. I wouldn't always buy the marketing hype from the pen retailers. Pen retailers put out a lot of great content on YouTube, and I'm very thankful for that. Like, I learned a lot from a lot of pen retailers who make videos about how to clean fountain pens and like reviews of fountain pens, but they do tend to put out marketing hype videos where they say like, oh, you have a next level pen and a entry level gold nib pen and a grail pen. So all of those categories are, in my opinion, made up. I think it's good to start out with an entry level pen because you don't know what you like yet, if you like finer nibs or broader nibs or what weight you like in a pen. But I don't think like next level pen, which is, I think a lot of people say is like that $50 to $100 price point, like that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Entry level gold nib, like the Pilot Vanishing Point is technically an entry level gold nib pen, but it's also like a grail pen for many people, and it's just like a great pen in general. Like it's not necessarily like you're stepping into the Vanishing Point to then get a more expensive pen. So I think like a lot of those things don't make sense. In my opinion, I would just get the pen you want to get and you can afford. And like, if you can't afford it, try to save up for it. It's just one of those things where because a more expensive pen is not necessarily a better pen, just try to figure out what aesthetic you like, what weight you like, and try the pens out if you can at a pen show or a pen meetup or at a pen retailer in person before you buy a pen. So what I think that companies are actually trying to do sometimes in those videos are get rid of a pen where they might have too much stock of it because it's not selling. So then they want to highlight that pen so the viewers will buy that pen, and then they can use that money to go purchase like next year's stock of pens and limited editions and things like that to refresh their stock for the future. So I wouldn't always buy the marketing hype from pen companies. Again, best thing to do is if you can try a pen in person, give it a try. Otherwise, just go for the pen you want. You don't need to like step up this ladder of next level pen, entry level gold nib pen before you get a higher end pen that you want. And also, like I said before, I don't think more expensive pens are better than less expensive pens. It's just a personal preference of what aesthetic you like and what you're looking for in your pens. So my next learning is that there are no good flex nib fountain pens as good as a regular dip pen, a steel point dip pen. So as I said before at the beginning of this video, I got into fountain pens because I thought it would improve my calligraphy. That is true to some extent, but I went on a years-long search of the best flex nib fountain pen. I tried like the Noodler's Ahab, like the Pilot FA and Pilot Falcon pens, and all those sorts of things. And while they definitely flex, and they do a good job, they don't come close to allowing you to do really good pointed pen calligraphy. I'm talking about like copperplate or engrosser's script type calligraphy. And while they don't, couple issues with flex nib fountain pens. First, they don't get the same line variation as a steel nib dip pen, that especially like one, like this where the tine's really spread. And I think, but the even bigger issue is that they don't snap back the same way that one of these pens do. And so when you're doing copperplate or engrosser's script, you really want like sharp points at the top of some of the strokes you're doing and at the bottom of some of the strokes you're doing. And a fountain pen just isn't going to get that for you. So over the years, maybe like 5 years into fountain pens, I finally came to the conclusion, unless it's maybe a vintage pen from 100 years ago or somewhere around there, you're not going to get anything close to what these steel dip pens can give you. So when I want to do calligraphy, I get out my dip pen ink, I get out this pen, and I do real proper calligraphy. That said, these fountain pens, I think, are really great writing instruments. I think better than ballpoints, roller balls, gel pens, fine liners, all of those. And they are good for doing business penmanship practice. So that also leads to another thing I've learned, that there is no perfect fountain pen, and there's no perfect pen in general. So even though I love a lot of these pens, and I'll throw one more in the mix. If you've seen my March Madness video, you know that the Pilot Custom 743 came out as my #1 pen this year. Even that pen, there's no perfect fountain pen. There's always going to be something like maybe the weight is off a little bit, or it's not quite the right size, or the nib's a little bit too dry or wet. There's always going to be, or you want something like in between the fine and the medium size tipping. There's always going to be something where a pen is not perfect. And I think that's where having multiple pens in your collection is a good thing. You can, when you have different use cases, you will use different pens. So this Pelican is a broad nib. I often use it for addressing envelopes, larger writing. This Pilot Prera is a short pen with a fine nib, so I often use it when I'm like going to a conference and traveling, and I'm going to be writing on like bad copy paper. There are like a lot of different use cases, and having multiple pens can be a good thing. I don't think you need like a lot of pens. I have 8 fountain pens on the screen right now. You probably don't even need that many, but like, you could get by with like 2 or 3. Like a fine nib, a broad nib, maybe like different sizes, different price points, whatever fits your needs. But yeah, I spent many of these 10 years, probably like 7 of them, thinking like, oh, maybe there's a perfect pen. And even now, like every now and then I'll see a pen, I'll be like, oh, maybe that'll be like the perfect pen. But then I remember like, no, there's no perfect pen. So instead of looking for a perfect pen, I just buy pens that I think fit some need in my collection, or that I just think are interesting. Learning that there's no perfect fountain pen has also been something that has slowed down my acquisition of pens, but also given me more joy in fountain pens as I use my pens more, instead of searching for a pen that does not exist and will never exist. The final learning I want to highlight is that the pen community is incredibly important to this hobby and how we enjoy this hobby. So initially, I just got into fountain pens because I wanted to write and I wanted to improve my calligraphy. But over time, I got involved in the community. I started making these pen videos. I got on Fountain Pen Network. I was on, Reddit r Fountain Pens. And I joined a local meetup group in my area. I go to the pen show that's in my metro area every year. And so I've gotten to know people a little bit. I've gotten to talk to some of you in the comments. And those sorts of things are what keeps this hobby interesting. Everybody has different opinions. Everybody has different experiences. You learn things from new people. I've learned a lot about like vintage pens from the folks who are older than me and have been in fountain pens longer. There are just a lot of interesting people and things you can learn. One nice thing about pen shows is that people come from all over the country and sometimes all over the world, and you get to hang out with each other. One nice thing is that generally the fountain pen hobby, even online, is generally a much friendlier place than other online spaces, so people support each other. It's very rare for us to, go out in the world and see somebody else using a fountain pen. So it's very nice to talk to people online and have people who you can share your hobbies and experiences with, who don't say like, oh, like, why don't you just use a ballpoint? So those are the things I've learned in my 10 years in the fountain pen hobby. I would love to hear in the comments the things that you've learned during your time in the fountain pen hobby, or if you're new to the fountain pen hobby, things that you're curious about and you might have questions about. I'm sure I can help out where I can, and I'm sure other people will also help out where they can. So with that, Appreciate you watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.